So, Caitlin, I absolutely appreciate you. Thank you for supporting Harmony at the Table, allowing us to bring it from Nashville to transform in Las Vegas. I'd love for you just to tell myself and the audience even why it was important.
Well, we really are aligned in terms of your perspective and view around the importance of creating an inclusive community that's really focused on understanding technology, the impacts of technology, and ensuring that we're being thoughtful about reducing bias in the workforce and the use of technology. And so being able to come together with a group of like-minded people and build that community around, a really important topic is why we wanted to be part of this incredible initiative.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you one thing that I know was a surprise. You didn't get a chance to know who was on the guest list. As an executive, as a CEO, sometimes it's hard to walk into the unknown. Was that uncomfortable?
Yes, it was. It was, but it's good because you could be surprised by the connections that come from, having the right people in the room. It's not always about the title. It's not always about, exactly what does that person do. It's about how are you able to connect and build that relationship with somebody that really has a similar viewpoint, and then that can foster new opportunities that were unexpected.
I appreciate you. I appreciate Plum. We appreciate everyone that's here tonight. Let's enjoy Harmony at the Table.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, Caitlin, I really appreciate you. And, doing Harmony at the Table, it was special. I tell people often, curating that dinner was it was probably 10 years in the making. And the fact that we were able to take it from Nashville to Las Vegas was even more special for me. And so I just want to say thank you again while we have you live for your willingness to get behind Harmony at the Table and what it was that we were trying to build.
Yeah, it was a really exceptional dinner, unlike any other dinner that I'd been part of. And I think it was about the timing of it. Every single person that joined Harmony at the Table, DE&I is at the heart of their core values, of their purpose in life. And it was at a time where that was coming under attack. And so to be in the room with the community and to be able to be vulnerable and share the impact of the market changes and the pressures in the market and how employers are changing, it was a real moment to have a sense of belonging with a community that cares and is a little bit unsure as to how to navigate these uncertain times in these waters. And so it was a chance to really be supportive of each other and come together as a community and talk about something that really matters. And we don't really have a clear understanding of how to move forward. So it took away some of that feeling like you're alone in the world and you're trying to solve an impossible problem, and realizing there's actually a whole bunch of us that are in the same boat, that care, and we could navigate this kind of new era together. So it was a really important dinner that went well beyond any transaction. And it was just about fostering that sense of community and shared belonging.
Such a great recap of the why and the moving forward. So if you don't mind, let's just roll it back just a moment, and maybe you can share a bit of a background. Who is Caitlin in your personal style of introduction, and maybe tease out a bit Plum, your founding of Plum.
So my name's Caitlin MacGregor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plum. And I started Plum 13 years ago because I was able to learn firsthand as a business leader the power of industrial organizational psychology. There is a science behind predicting performance and being able to predict retention. And I was very lucky to get exposed to that through a very expensive consultant that helped me with the hiring at my company. And I realized that there was an opportunity in the market to democratize access to this highly predictive science, to take the industrial organizational psychology out of the hands of these expensive consultants and turn it into software and democratize access so that we could measure every single candidate, every single employee, and get the missing data on people's innate talents, the durable skills that endure throughout somebody's career and really are 4 times more accurate and where they went to school and where they previously worked and all the keywords on their resume, getting to the heart of what drives somebody and gives them a sense of self-worth and allows them to show up and outperform their peers. We can measure that. But, 13 years ago, it was horrible user experience, really fragmented science. And the best science was held, behind really expensive consultants. So started Plum to create a software platform that has now the leading soft skills, durable skills assessment with the best candidate experience and best employee experience. So we really focused on creating a profile that every single person in the workforce can have that really highlights their talents like innovation and communication, execution, and provide development suggestions and provide the insights to help you shortlist who to bring into a structured interview, or how to support people with their development goals, or how to think about which people you want to put on a leadership track versus a subject matter expert track, and basically add this missing data into employers' existing workflow and empower individuals to have this insight and data around themselves.
So, you mentioned something a moment ago. 13 years ago, process was a bit fragmented, or it really involved costly consultancies. It was a bit of a black box. It was a bit of a mystery as to how we did that. What has the market, in your opinion, what's the market said about the Plum application, whether it be the ease of use, whether it be its ability to expand the perimeter in terms of how we're bringing talent into the equation?
I think the biggest thing that's changed is that realizing that individuals love completing their Plum profile. Like, it's actually the first assessment people want to complete. And we know that because we have a 93% completion rate, and 94% of candidates and employees say that they get enormous value from their Plum profile. We see people by the minute sharing their results online. And that's because it's not a black box. When they complete their one-time Plum profile, which is like a LinkedIn profile, but it's about what they could do if given the opportunity, not just what they've done historically. When they get their own Plum profile, it is so rich with feedback and data and support and development opportunities that they get so much value from the short 20, 25 minutes that it takes to complete a Plum profile, which they don't need to retake. It will stay with them throughout their career. They can retake it, but they don't have to. They get so much value in return. So I think the first thing is realizing that this is not a barrier. This is actually a way to provide support to every single candidate, every single employee, and that they want to take it and they appreciate taking it. So that's the first part. The second part is how predictive it is. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're all striving for is, you get bombarded with thousands and thousands of applicants. How do you know the ones that are worth your time and attention to bring into that structured interview, that are going to work out long-term and are going to drive performance and productivity and stay in the role, so you're not just rehiring it 12 months later? And so, as I said, Plum is 4 times more accurate than a resume. But what that translates to is that, we have over 90% of hiring managers said that they would rehire their Plum recommended match again. And we're seeing that they're doubling retention as a result. And we're seeing, as one of the side effects of this, is by, looking at this data as right at the top of the funnel, deciding who to spend your time and focus on, we end up screening in people that may not have the 8 years of experience at this job, or may not have graduated from that school. And so we're seeing that this really is truly how organizations become a skills-based organization. And when you are focusing on things like, I need an innovative person, these are the most innovative people in my applicant pool, you end up screening in people you weren't looking at before. So you increase the diversity of people that you're bringing in and you're hiring, because it's giving people an even playing field to be shown based on how they will excel if given the opportunity.
And part of this conversation really is hinging on the report that we did, that Plum was a part of, in terms of a collaboration and partner and sponsor around reducing bias in human resources using artificial intelligence. And I will tell you, Caitlin, I actually struggled a bit in terms of titling the report, because I knew that people, when they read the title, they may feel like if they weren't in human resources, that it didn't have application. And what I've shared with individuals when I've pushed out the link to the report is to review and read such, take it in, let it marinate, and then find aspects of the report that you can have a discussion with in terms of your EB or employer branding strategy, your supplier diversity strategy, your corporate social responsibility and philanthropic effort. Find pieces of the report that you can digest with various business units and departments. How do you feel when you hear that sort of assessment of the totality of reducing bias in HR using AI?
I think that it's such a bigger topic than I think most people are even acknowledging right now. I think we're past a tipping point. AI is inevitable. And I don't know if we're really thinking through how much that is going to change the fundamentals of how we think about work from day one. And kind of the way that if we look way back, people used to do work on typewriters, they used to do work by hand, and then we had desktop computers that entered the workforce. And all of a sudden, when we started hiring, there was kind of this binary. Are they computer literate or not computer literate? And if you weren't computer literate, all of a sudden, you were no longer relevant to the workforce. So everybody had to become computer literate. But that time period of people making the transition, we had a decade, maybe 5 years where you could do it slowly. You could start with, becoming familiar with Microsoft Word. You didn't have to be an expert in Excel if it wasn't related to your job. Like, you could slowly transition. Now, all of a sudden, no, AI is coming for taking over the administrative, repetitive tasks. Well, where are most of the repetitive administrative tasks? They're in entry-level jobs. So most people that are entering the workforce spend the first 3 years in the workforce doing mundane, repetitive administrative things to get their foot in the door, to get some job experience on their resumes so that then they can be employed by the next employer. The majority of entry-level jobs today are saying that they want people to have more than 3 years of experience already. We are about to have a huge problem where we're going to be eliminating early entry jobs. So what's happening to Gen Z? What's happening to the 18 to 28-year-olds that no longer have the on-ramp into the workforce? When you start the career ladder without the first few rungs, what is that going to like? There is going to be this domino effect where the nature of work is going to impact certain roles, certain generations, certain people really, really, really quickly. And we know, based on looking at data, that goes back, if you aren't getting that earning potential in the first few years of your job, if you're not set up in your early career on the right trajectory, if you get stuck in service work, working at a restaurant, to then all of a sudden to switch to white collar work, that's a hard transition if you do it too late in life. It is the white collar jobs that are going to be the most impacted by AI. And that has huge, huge, huge ripple effects. So this is not an HR. This is not a, HR people need to be paying attention to this, or the risk department needs to be paying attention to this. This is a huge paradigm shift that is going to, I think, affect Gen Z very, very quickly, like in the next year, 2, 3. And I don't think anybody's talking about that bigger macro impact. And it requires a complete rethinking of how we match people to jobs and how we think about hiring. And that's the risk with AI right now, is that all the AI is being used to pattern match. All the AI is just speeding up existing hiring practices. But we've got to rethink this entire thing, and we've got to go back to the science, not just what we've been doing over and over again for the last 50 decades.
So,
5 decades.
some might listen to that observation and say, what category do I place Caitlin and Torin in? Do I place them in the category of optimistic of ambitious, of beautiful? Do I place them in one of those three categories? Certainly some others. Do I place them over in the category of doom or naysayer or maybe even negligent? Let me use a really hyperbolic word, negligent. Is the conversation that they are having around this paradigm shift and rethinking process and system? Well, where do you place it, Caitlin? Because I know you're having it, and I know it's probably a bit of a slanted question, if you will. But I guess what I don't want people to walk away feeling is that we feel anything other than we have to be responsible in how we are thinking about and approaching what we know is inevitable.
I think a really great example is what happened with COVID. All of a sudden, HR was mission critical. They had a seat at the table. If we weren't taking care of base necessities, if we weren't providing people physical and mental security and stability and safety, we weren't going to have them showing up and doing their job. So all of a sudden, HR had one of the most strategic places at the table. We had CEOs stepping up and acting like chief people officers and taking it in their mandate to think about the well-being of their people. And that was an amazing time for our industry, not because of what was happening, that was devastating, but because we were part of the conversation, and a critical part was humans first. Humans were at the center of thinking about this. What's happened with the last 2.5 years with an economic downturn is that it's all been about how do we save money? And AI provides a huge opportunity to save money. The issue is that we are not thinking about the humans anymore. We have gone back to HR being a cost center. We've gone back to, AI being a cost-saving solution. It's all back to the money, and we've lost the prioritization of people. I believe that AI is going to require us to rethink the role of humans in getting work done. When we had people farming, we needed bodies on the fields in order to eat. Then when we had manufacturing introduced, we needed people in the manufacturing buildings to get the manufacturing supply chain lines to go. Then we had, white collar works. We needed people at computers in order to get the work done. There's a reinvention of where do we need humans? Where do we need AI? How do the humans augment the AI and the AI augment the humans? But what does that mean for what we're looking for with humans? So for example, in the past, we have prioritized for a software developer, do you know Python? The reality is the computer languages are going to become less and less and less important. And it's going to be more, how can I communicate probably in my native tongue of English or whatever language you speak, and the computer interpret that and then write the code. So all of a sudden, it's not about, do you need somebody that's good at Python, and do I need to do a hard skills test to what level of Python do they have? And now all of a sudden, how good of a communicator am I to the tool that's going to write the code? And how good am I to, as a collaborator and a team member of the people that have the other pieces of the puzzle, so we can communicate correctly to the machine what needs to be done? So all of a sudden, the most important skill that may be required for a future software developer has nothing to do with technical ability and everything to do with the soft transferable skills. And we're seeing that in the science, that doesn't matter what role you're in, it's those transferable soft skills that are going to distinguish who's a top performer versus a lower performer. And it's all about finding your right fit. Are you in a role that's going to leverage what makes you unique? That's going to become more important than ever, because the time to learn, AI can help me learn pretty much anything. So if I want to learn something like how to do Excel, this crazy formula, I can ask ChatGPT, I need this formula. It can give it to me and I can input it into Excel. And now all of a sudden, I've probably saved myself maybe 30 hours of learning with that simple command. So if the time to learn has reduced, which is happening over and over again, and we don't need humans to do certain things, we're going to have to rethink about our role as humans in the workforce. And I think this is an amazing opportunity, but we can't be short-sighted, and we have to be challenging ourselves to do things differently. The reality is this is the most equalizing opportunity. Everyone is starting over with a clean slate, and everybody has value to be a human in this workforce and to be leveraged for their uniquely human skills. And so I think it's going to be a great opportunity, but I don't think we're necessarily thinking about it the right way yet.
I'm smiling because I heard you say a democratization. I heard you said a leveling of the playing field. You double tapped, you double clicked on soft skills and communication, and it's such the foundation of so much, maybe even all of what we do. And I will say to you, your example around Python is prescient for me because I think about, I'm not a techie in any way. I love technology. I'm not a techie, and so one of the things that I've done is I've gone out and said that on a at least monthly basis, sometimes a bit more current, or I'm testing and playing with different applications, and I won't mention the one, but I actually tried to build like a little mini app, and it was all done through my ability to communicate. And so I think even though prompt is fast becoming low hanging fruit in this process, and prompting for the audience is what I'm saying, prompting, telling Chat GPT or one of the others what it is that you are trying to accomplish. While some may say that it's fast becoming low hanging fruit in the order of consideration, I still think it is so foundational and important, and that we cannot speed past the better ability that we have to communicate with the system. The better the system is going to be in terms of rendering what it is that we are seeking. Would you agree with that? And I really, really love the fact of basically you said AI is probably the biggest, it's even bigger than the introduction of the internet itself, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Absolutely. There's nothing like this that we have ever gone through in any of our lifetimes. This is the most significant technological advancement. And part of it is because of how quickly it's happening. There is no time to catch our breath. There is no time to slowly adopt. It's happening, and the impacts are happening incredibly quickly, and impacts that are going to be harmful in some ways to particular generations, particular types of industries and roles, where until we have an alternative, if they're replacing entry level jobs, then how are we hiring, early career? Well, if we start hiring early career, assuming that they're a clean slate, that actually have an advantage over the rest of the population because they don't know better. They don't know how that marketing job was done for the last 10 years. They don't know how those tasks were done for the last 10 years. They're clean slate. They can learn from day one how to have an AI first approach. When I tell my 25-year-old person who is a jack of all trades. She does so many different things. Assisting me, a little bit like a chief of staff, is part of her role. When I tell her to go off and build a PowerPoint, she's not spending time in PowerPoint coming up with slides and moving things back and forth. She's starting in ChatGPT and telling it the type of presentation that I'm looking for, and it's building each slide. Then she can go into design software, and it's then taking that outline and generating the slides. She knows how to do things from an AI first approach, because every time she goes to do something that she's never done before, she's doing it with AI, which is coming up with a different response. We are so programmed. For example, if I have a challenge with a colleague, I could bring up ChatGPT today or whatever model you're using. Most people, if they have a problem and they're we're used to Googling, right? So we're used to Googling, I have this problem. So now we're trying to go into the ChatGPT or alternative app. The default is I'm going to start typing, because that's what I did when I Googled something. I would type in the question or the problem I'd have. I challenge anybody in the next month, go in to, there's all these are free for a free account. Go into a ChatGPT, don't type, don't do transcript, voice to text. Go in and have a conversation. There is a button that you press, and it's a dialogue button, and you just start talking. You don't type a thing, you just start talking and it will talk back. So my son for school the other day was saying that he has to do a presentation on this very specific character, real life historic character. There was a prosecutor in a very specific political historical event. And he said he had to go and do research on this person. And I said, open ChatGPT. He's like, no, I'm not allowed to use ChatGPT. I said, you're not going to get the bullets of what you're going to write. I want you to learn about him. So we opened ChatGPT, we turned on the dialogue, and he said, hey, this is the project I'm working on. This is the character. And can you tell me about him? And it then for 5 minutes gave my son a tutorial, auditory tutorial about this person. And then my son, because he's curious, starts asking questions. And they're going back and forth talking. Well, if I have a problem with a colleague, I'm turning that on and I'm having a dialogue and they're helping me learn where my blind spots are. They're helping me learn about that colleague and how they may be thinking about things. And it's an AI first approach where like, I never would have started in that way. And I've had to teach myself to even the starting point even has to be entirely different when you start to take an AI first approach. And then my interaction as a human, how I'm responding and my timelines and the outputs I'm getting are all different because the starting point was entirely different.
With a different starting point, you actually just triggered a thought to me, because what you've done is you've I don't want to get in trouble for saying this. So anyone listening to this and or the replay, I want you to know that I'm not being what's the word, that I'm irresponsible, but you've personified the various systems, whether it be Claude, whether it be Chat, whether it be some of the others. You've personified it in a way where you really can use it as a consultant, as a coach, as a design partner, as a thought partner, as you literally in that 2 or 3 minutes, you've given it different personalities in which it can show up and provide efficacy, efficiency, value, mind melting. And it's not that we take away immediately what it has given us, but what you've said is we just have more resources and there is a different way for us to approach whatever scenario it is that we are experiencing. I absolutely love that, which takes me to your article. You wrote an article recently in Forbes, and the article is titled, let me get to the top, "An aligned culture is your organization's force multiplier." Again, it was drafted, or shall I say published on April 29th. An aligned culture is your organization's force multiplier. Why that title? And then there was a passage in such that I want to ask you about specifically.
The foundation of all of this is that as we're going through massive change, every organization is going through massive change. If you don't have a North Star that everyone's working towards, if you don't have everybody rowing in the same direction, it is going to take too long to pivot, to change directions, to move in this new way. You're going to have everybody rowing in different directions and fighting. And so, we are at the cusp of, we're going to see who are the blockbusters that go out of business and who are the Netflix that pivot and change and find the new model. And because we're being rushed, the consequences are happening at lightning speed if we're not getting this right. As an organization is committed to evolving through this change, they need to ensure that everybody is aligned. So a lot of organizations, for example, have been just trying to hire a lot of AI talent. But if you do a survey in the organization, it'll say that 40% of people don't understand the why behind it. They don't understand the implications of it. They don't understand the downward impacts. So that investment isn't understood for the rest of the organization. And so there's a lot of resistance to change. So aligning the entire organization towards the new North Star and getting everybody rowing in the same direction means that the execution of the strategy of how you get from A to B, how you get from where you are today to where you're trying to go with your strategy, is dependent on if you have that foundational underlying culture. And that's why it's an X multiplier, because if everybody's rowing in the same direction, you're going to hit your destination before the competition, before the negative consequences, and you're going to be able to be successful. But if you're wasting all your time, rowing in circles and people aren't aligned, you're going to hit way too many roadblocks. That change management is the most critical part of this journey, not just in changing people's mindset and changing their behaviors, but in getting people to think about work and the workplace differently. And we can't underestimate the power of an aligned culture to support strategy. And this is where we're facing the largest amount of change ever. That this is one of the most important things. And the sad thing with all of this is that most organizations have no measurement to help inform if their culture is aligned or not, and to diagnose where the opportunities are to bridge those gaps and create greater alignment so that they can move faster. It's one of these areas where, just like soft skills, where, oh, it's too expensive, it's too complicated, it's too messy, so we're not going to do it. And that's completely outdated. No, you can easily measure soft skills, durable skills, innate talents, human skills, whatever you want to call them. And you can easily measure where is your company culture today and where ideally do you want it to be. And then once you know that North Star, you can even show every employee how they relate innately to that North Star so that you can then develop your employees to help support them with the new direction.
Let me tell you, I do not want to hit a soapbox. You really are giving me like a round 2 and maybe even a round 3, Caitlin. And I am so absolutely serious. Let me give you an example why. So here's a passage from that particular article. It says, and this is a little long, so bear with me. It says, gathering a more detailed view of your workforce makes it possible to identify what's out of alignment and determine how to fix it. It can also set your cultural North Star, the values you'll roll back to. If you're looking at assessment data, for instance, you may find specific knowledge and skills gaps, which will likely result in broader learning and development initiatives. Gathering a more detailed view of your workforce makes it possible to identify what's out of alignment and determine how to fix it. I paused there because while the entire article was good, and I highly encourage viewers to find it on Forbes and to digest it and share it internally. I paused there because so many organizations are afraid of collecting data. They don't want stratas of data. We want the larger bucket of data, but we don't really want to know the intimate details of that data. Plausible deniability is what I've considered it, called it, named it. And so can you really just go on your piece around, we don't really have ways of measuring it? Because some may hear that and say, well, we have pulse surveys, or we do annual culture assessments or whatnot. But what you're saying is those are fine. We should be doing more. Talk about more.
Yeah. So most companies have some form of engagement survey, and most engagement surveys are an iteration of Gallup's 15 questions, which has really been the gold standard. And at the heart of it, it gets to questions like, do I have a best friend at work? Do I know what my manager expects of me? Those are all helpful conversations, but that's not about your company culture. I'm talking about a very specific 7-minute survey that asks a bunch of questions around what's your current company culture, not what's on, the poster or what people say, but how does it show up in day-to-day practice? What's rewarded? What is actually demonstrated as on a day-to-day basis? What's most like your company culture and least like your company culture? So you get to the heart of really what's being prioritized today. Then we do the exact same set of questions. The whole thing takes 7 minutes, and they're asked the same questions, but now it's about asking the individual, what ideally do you think the culture should be in order to be successful long-term? Taking all of that knowledge that the person has and what should be the priority, what should be most like the company culture and least like the company culture. And what's fascinating is that when you do this for every single employee in just 7 minutes, you're able to see, hey, do different geographies think differently? Do different departments think differently? Do different tenures think differently? Do different generations think differently? How many organizations have said, oh, it's the millennials, they're having the problem, or it's the Gen Zs that's having the problem, or it's that department that's having the problem, or it's that region that's having the department. A lot of the times when we look at the data, those are all red herrings. There's actually far more alignment across an organization than most companies suspect, which makes it really fascinating when you find the 1, 2, or 3 things that are completely demonstrate a large gap. And it's so prescriptive. Like it diagnoses, hey, actually, the biggest thing that's going on right now is that people feel like they can't do more because they don't have enough information. There's a gap between the transparency that exists today and the transparency that people wish existed. So knowing that that's the gap, how do we reduce the gap? By increasing the transparency. And that's something actionable. And just by doing that and closing the gap on this one area that's super important for this organization, you're going to see that alignment and you're going to see that increased productivity across the organization. And when you have this data and you're able to dissect it, sometimes the gap is there's something very specific happening at the executive level that's not happening anywhere else. Well, if there's a disconnect at the executive level from everywhere else, then that's the thing you want to focus on. So it's really helpful to say, hey, you can have all these different programs, you can have all these different strategies for the next year, but this is actually pinpoint where you'll have the biggest difference. And people don't take the time to do the diagnostic because I think a lot of the times they think they have to bring in a big consulting firm in order to do it. And that's the difference. Like part of all of this is that we can do this with a positive experience for users. We can tie it back to the individual so that after they give their results and you say, actually, what I really need in the organization is to promote more innovation. Okay, well, now every employee can see how they show up when it comes to innovation. Is that a driver for them? Is that a drainer for them? If it's a driver, maybe there's more opportunity for them to put their hand up more, for them to be early adopters, for them to say, hey, I'd love to lead an innovative project and experiment and then report back what's working and be on the front line of early adoption in the organization versus somebody that may be really low and drained by innovation. That's great. They just need examples of success and more time training and more time shadowing people that have already figured out the new normal. And so you can kind of segment who are the early adopters, who are the laggards that are going to need to see success in order for them to move forward. And you can start to personalize and pinpoint the best ways to help with this change management rather than a one size fits all.
So, there's something interesting about the transparency piece. And for me, when I listen to that, Caitlin, I'm hearing that leadership is a lot of things. And one of which it's being comfortable with what we've found and not accepting it, so to speak, or not being complacent with it, so to speak, but to say, look, this is the reality. And so part of leadership is our being able to make a decision that says we're going to go in a different direction, or we're going to examine deeper what it was that we've found and figure out how we can connect that to a better outcome, how we can connect that to a better process. Does that require a new system or a new technology? Does it demand that we reshape our organization, shift some of our human assets, if you will, so that they operate and perform differently? I think part of leadership is a more honest discovery, examination, reality with what it is that we are finding, rather than sweeping such up under a rug or saying, I really want to bury my head in the sand. I don't want to approach that. That's what I'm hearing from you.
I find it fascinating that CEOs run their business based on P&L, profit and loss statements, based on very detailed financial statements. We now have learned in the last 20 years to run sales and marketing with very, very detailed analyses. Everything is tracked, everything is measured. We're running it through data. When it comes to HR, a lot of this stuff still, I think there is opportunity for missing data to be added into the equation and for that to be seen as a benefit that now we know. And based on that, we can decide what we want to do next. We can decide what we prioritize on, but we don't have our head in the sands. We're being very clear. And I would think this data is more important than ever as we go through dramatic change. This helps us inform how to support people through the change and how to get there as quickly as possible. And almost like insurance for the strategy. Executives put in so much time and effort into their strategy. So much money is being spent on acquiring companies, merging departments. We're trying to find lots of ways of growing revenue and consolidating resources. And so anytime that you're taking different entities and putting them together, you're taking different cultures and putting them together. Anytime you're taking different departments and you're blending them together, it's helpful to understand the starting point and understand where the overlap is and the agreement is on where they're trying to go. Because you can then double down on the similarities, double down on the things that and use that as a commonality to help find that new direction forward. And so I find it fascinating that this isn't required for any kind of M&A or any kind of, workforce kind of reorg, because it's such critical, easy data to get and so great to involve employees in understanding the role they play based on where you're trying to take the organization. Everybody talks about learning and development and everybody talks about upskilling, but what's the direction the company is going to go? How can I, as an individual, be empowered to understand how I fit into that journey and use that data to help then inform my learning and development?
Love that. So I want to switch in the time that we have remaining. I want to switch and talk a bit about the report. And again, the report is titled Reducing Bias in HR Using Artificial Intelligence. I'm dropping a QR code up so that folks can grab a copy of that. Caitlin, inside of such, there were a number of findings, 7,500 plus words. Plum actually submitted a case study, and a real case study, not an example. The only thing that we did was we anonymized the client. But this was a global concern in financial services. And one of the things that has really struck me is financial services has long been using artificial intelligence. They have some procedure, some protocol process that's in place that in some ways can really be used as a best practice. We had a couple of financial services examples inside of the report. My question to you is, when you think about the client in the case study, what has maybe changed even from the beginning when you began to work with them up until, let's say, now?
I think that their results are impressive and things that other companies are now just starting to look at and be interested in. So in early 2020, they were sick and tired of constantly losing out to the competition when they were looking at recent graduates that they were hiring. So they were hiring from 5 different elite universities, from finance and business graduates, and then they'd be in the competition with everybody else to hire them, and they'd lose out to consulting firms and other banks that could pay more money. So they decided, instead of trying to continually do what everybody else was doing, that they would do something wildly different. And they eliminated resumes for all their campus hire roles. And instead, they hired people based on their Plum profile and how well it matched one of the 14 different jobs that they had available. So a candidate would apply for, a business analyst and maybe only as a 35 match, but then they'd be a 94 match for commercial banking. And so they'd be like, hey, let's interview you for commercial banking. This is why you'll be happy, fulfilled, and thrive in this role. And as a result of that, they are now hiring from 33 different colleges and universities. And 40% of their hires are STEM and arts backgrounds. So no longer just hiring finance and business graduates, they're hiring arts backgrounds. They're hiring people from all over the place and all over the continent. And it's been really fascinating because as a result of that, by screening in all these people that they weren't looking at before, they increased their hiring of underrepresented minorities to 60%, and they doubled retention. And those hiring managers, a year later, 91% of them said that they would rehire their Plum recommended match again. So really amazing to see that by getting rid of where did you go to school, what did you study, and treating these graduates as, clean slates, that they're going to train from day one. And it's just about where are the right behaviors for the different jobs? Where do they need the people that are best at teamwork? Where do they need the people that are best at persuading? Where do they need the decision makers? And looking, and everybody has those. That's the great thing about this data, is that no particular group is outweighed one way or another. There's no adverse impact when you start matching people based on behaviors. And so, and it completely changed the outcome of who they're hiring. And that's just been, I think, a true example of being a skills-based organization where in practice is delivering real results.
You know, Caitlin, I'm smiling right now because it was in this moment where you just said something. You gave a statistic around their increase in representation in the slate. And it just hit me that your number in the case study, current for that client, matches what we found in the report in terms of deploying AI solutions, well, whether or not it would help you to further better diversify your slate of talent. It literally just hit me in the moment how your case study aligns perfectly with what we found when we explored the conversation with, I don't know, some 500-600 or so HR practitioners. I want to go back to something that you said, though, because what I've long said in the consulting practice is that part of the way that we do D&I better is we have to be willing to expand the footprint. You said 33 academic institutions right now. It didn't start that way. And so was Plum instrumental in getting them on more academic campuses, or exploring or being open to more academic campuses, or was that sort of a function of the two sitting side by side working together?
It was the partnership, because when you open your aperture and you start screening in people that you've never looked at before, there's a fear. What am I going to do with all of these applicants? How am I going to know where there's quality applicants versus just, not, filler that's just going to slow us down and going to distract us? And so a lot of the times, the reason why people are worried about going to brand new sources and really doing a call that anybody can apply is, how do I handle that extra volume? And so Plum allowed it so that we don't charge per assessment. We want you to assess as many people as possible, because you're looking for the people that are best fit from a behavioral standpoint for that role. You're looking for, the cream of the crop, or the needle in a haystack. So we want you to assess everybody to then bubble up who are the best aligned matches. And we want you to be able to apply, match them to all your different roles. So it's not just, are they a good fit for this role, but what roles in your organization is this incredible talent a fit for? So it gave them a solution that if they opened it up, then they would be able to screen more people. And then Plum would be able to surface the ones that are the absolute top matches. We have another example in healthcare, which is a really interesting industry, because a lot of the times they don't have enough applicants. Certain roles, they get lots of applicants, but a lot of the time it's that they don't have enough people. So back to the entry level component, what they've done is they've created 10 entry level roles that are basically on ramps into healthcare, into their organization. And you don't have to have certification. You don't have to have prior experience. They're just looking at people that have the behavioral fit. So they go around, they have people complete their Plum profile, and then they're matched to 10 different roles. And they're able to say, hey, also, once you're in this job, if you want to upskill, this is the next level that you'll even be a fit for behaviorally. So they can get people in the door and show them that career progression in their organization. And they're opening it up to people that have never been in healthcare. They're trying to go after people that have maybe been in non-white collar jobs, all these different industries, and to say healthcare is going to provide a long-term path of greater success for you. And it's de-risking it for the applicant by saying, hey, this is why you're going to be a good fit here. And so it's been another area where they don't have enough talent, so they're opening up the aperture to go after completely different backgrounds.
Caitlin, that's perfect, because it really reinforces your commitment to people further considering the softer skills. You said behavioral fit. Do I have the characteristic? Do I have a principle of foundation? Do I have a certain degree of empathy, if you will, towards being in this space, or caring for, providing a degree of service, connection with individuals? it really, really reinforces that we cannot minimize the value that soft skills brings to an equation, and that it is absolutely a part of how an individual shows up and produces. And it most certainly helps to shape that culture that you talked about 10, 12 minutes ago.
Absolutely. And I don't know what the right word is because it's changing. I don't think soft skills gives it enough credit. I've seen that in the education space, they've really kind of rallied around talking about durable skills, the idea of the perishable skills like Python, that over time, the shelf life is diminishing. The last report that came out that said that hard skills, technical hard skills, had a shelf life of 2.5 years, meaning 50% of them are completely irrelevant in 2.5 years. I've seen a more recent report that's saying it's coming down to matters of months now. So those perishable skills that we're constantly evaluating new candidates on, that don't predict success, don't predict long-term retention, and it's just a safety measure that employers use, that data is becoming less and less relevant, and the shelf life really is turning into months now. And so the perishable skills need to stop being the focus, and the durable skills like innovation, communication, all these transferable soft skills, that needs to be the focus, because that is what is going to endure no matter how the jobs change. And that is where they're going to be successful in their career, kind of no matter what. We know people, I mean, if you talk to somebody who's in their 60s and you say, what did you go to school for? And, what was your career path? Some of the most successful people never went to school for the thing that they're now doing. And some of the most important career transitions were somebody saw potential in them. And so there was a bit of luck involved. And so we know that the people that really excel, it's that they find that career, they find that job where it is those innate transferable soft skills that finally allowed them to excel beyond their peers, that they found the right role at the right time. But a lot of the times it's somebody saw it, somebody gave them that opportunity. They saw that potential and they moved them into something totally different. And we need to take the luck and the, if you have a stronger network, the chance of that happening is greater. If you don't have access to those people, if you don't have access to those type of opportunities, the chances of that somebody spotting your unique talent is less. There's an opportunity to take it out of that very luck-driven and network-driven and influence-driven type of scenario and give everybody the opportunity to be matched to the job where their innate talents, the things that make them exceptional, get to shine. You, Torin, are in a position where you uniquely are able to, galvanize and create a community and bring people together. You are incredible on stage to rally an audience and get them involved. Like, you're using what uniquely is Torin on a daily basis. And that's amazing. And that's what we want for everybody. How do they get to be set up for success? And the roles and responsibilities, those are going to change so quickly. But what is it that makes them tick and gets them out of bed in the morning, excited about the work they're going to do? And what is it that's more draining that ideally they would give to, delegate to somebody else or put more time aside in their calendar to do that thing that's really draining for them?
Flash in the QR code one more time, because while we've talked positively and we remain positive about the presence of artificial intelligence, maybe you can share just one challenge or downside, or I'll use the word pause, Caitlin. Maybe you can highlight one area where, if you're talking to practitioners and leaders, you would caution them to consider what?
I think it's about the perishable skills. I would caution them to put a lot less emphasis on perishable skills than they have historically. And that's with candidates and that's with their employees. I see a lot of AI just trying to add a whole bunch of keywords to an individual around their perishable skills. And I think we're missing an opportunity to really double down and focus on measuring and matching based on durable skills and thinking about jobs differently based on what are the behaviors you need from somebody. What are the behaviors inside your organization that you can leverage in order to accelerate your strategy? And I think that this is the time. I think people are slowly getting there. They just don't know how yet. They're talking about skills-based, but I still think they're over-rotating on the perishable skills with that strategy.
So as we wrap up, I'd love for you to just maybe close out with a consideration. It could be something as it relates to Plum and its position in the marketplace. I'm going to flash a slide in a moment. Caitlin, I'm going to switch it with you and I with that. But give your closing comments, let's say in 2 or 3 moments.
I think everybody has an opportunity to develop greater self awareness around what is it that is their superpowers, the thing that makes them exceptional. So we're giving people the opportunity to complete their own Plum profile, and it's free. And take it if you've got kids that are, in university or graduating and trying to figure out, if they're Gen Z and they're trying to figure out what's happening with their career. Get really, really, really good at articulating what makes you exceptional and think about your career path differently based on that. And then I would say use AI to complement and enhance and augment what you are doing. So use AI as much as possible and become an early adopter in it. And it's, these models are changing regularly. The ability to generate images 3 months ago wasn't great. Now it is. So just challenge yourself to try to take an AI first approach when you're completing tasks. Think about not how do you speed up the old way of doing it, but if you were day one, you've never done this task and you were going to go and use AI, how would you accomplish that? So just force yourself to, you could do everything on pen and paper or typewriter. And then you're like, no, I'm going to figure this out on a computer. Then you're like, I'm going to figure out to do this on a smartphone. This is the next evolution. You've got to be practicing using these tools every day and changing how you approach day one of completing tasks with an AI first approach.
The report is titled "Reducing Bias in Reducing Bias in HR Using Artificial Intelligence." I really appreciate you, Caitlin, and the entire team for signing on and being a collaboration partner with my team. It was our first undertaking. It was the first time that we've done the report, and we're most certainly going to do it again. In particular on this particular subject, because one of the things that people asked is as a D&I strategist and consultant, you didn't spend a lot of time talking about the challenges and pitfalls of AI. And we will. We weren't ignoring them. We wanted to use our first bite at the apple in a way that was beautiful, ambitious, and positive. And so I just want to say thank you again for being our collaboration partner. And as we close out and end this particular stream, I'm going to bring up the slide again because I do want people to complete a Plum assessment. I want you to get the link from the show notes, and I want you to share this recording and the links with others in your digital tribe. So, Caitlin, I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. This has been a pleasure to collaborate with you, and I really appreciate this conversation today.
Awesome.